Good morning and good evening to the audience and our speakers for the 9th Transatlantic AI Exchange web session. Today is January the 25th, 2022. We are again super excited bringing together industry experts and connecting them with the up-and-coming German AI ecosystem. Allow me to provide a quick overview of this Transatlantic AI Exchange initiative. The Transatlantic AI Exchange is a networking platform established in early 2021 that aims at accelerating and expanding the transatlantic knowledge exchange around technologies, business opportunities, entrepreneurship, and academia and research. We foster exchanges on AI and create the grounds for a whole ecosystem, including investors and the German, what we call Mittelstand, and policymakers to build long-term partnerships. We couldn't do this without sponsors. Therefore, I would like to thank our platinum sponsors, Taylor Wessing, and our gold sponsor, the German consulate in San Francisco. We have already secured an impressive list of topics for 2022, and are really excited about experts supporting our program. For more details and to secure a slot, feel free to sign up right after today's event. For 2022, we will also introduce a new concept to provide a much wider range of valuable viewpoints in an extended 2-hour session. With our partner, Startup Network Europe, we set up the very first virtual, what we call EU AI conference. It's virtual, with a focus of building a bridge between Europe and the US. Based on similar events, we are expecting over, believe us or not, 1,000 attendees and more. So please go to our website for more information. It is online right now. You don't want to miss it. If you believe that our events are of value to you and your network, we greatly appreciate if you could share and like us on our LinkedIn page so that we can expand our network and connect the individuals. If anyone has a transatlantic AI related topic of any sort, please reach out to us and we will consider building them into the program. Today, we welcome yet another high class of speakers who are all very familiar with the challenges and opportunities around the cloud service. At the end of this session, we will provide a new Zoom link in the chat window to open up a 30-minute networking opportunity for all the audiences who are interested to talk to the panelists. Now, I like to make a quick side note that Joachim Hertzberg from the DFKI Oldenburg was on the panel scheduled. Unfortunately, this morning, he sent us a note that unfortunately he's sick. We will send him all the health across the Atlantic. Hope he's getting soon better. And with that, we will actually follow up with him later because the topic that he was covering around agriculture within artificial intelligence was so unique and interesting that we will pick that up at a later point. So with that, let's get into it. If we can, thank you very much. So let's get to it. The topic, as you may have seen before in our announcements, no business or consumer is able today to conduct business without relying on data services that are hosted in the cloud. I think we all know that. In this particular session today, the experts will discuss how increasing concerns around data privacy, ethics, market dominance obviously must be addressed. Entrepreneurs that we have on the call will provide examples of how such solution also could create business opportunities. And the real question is also, and I asked the same when I was introduced to the topic, is it actually too late to build a public cloud alternative against the 7 global hyperscalers that we all know? AWS, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, you name it, and obviously some in Asia. So the EU, Europe, needs a strong AI ecosystem to compete globally. The transatlantic data spaces are a key success factor for Europe, and Europe has provided a leadership, or can provide a leadership, in challenging big global corporations around monopolies and data privacy rights. These are the core topics that is driving us, including the business opportunities that we have. So around a year ago, I was introduced to a project in Europe. It's called Gaia X. And very fortunately, we have some experts and people who really drove this particular project forward. With that, I would like to introduce and invite each speaker to introduce themselves, what they do, how they're engaged with Gaia X, but also in general, what their opinions are about cloud in general. With that, I am more than happy to welcome again, second time, Marco Alexander Bright. Marco, if you please go ahead and introduce yourself with your background and what you are going to cover today. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Good evening and good morning to all of you, and welcome in my basement. Thank you, Thomas, for this great idea and the initiative that you took with the Transatlantic AI Exchange. So my name is Marco Alexander Breit. I'm working with the German Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action. I'm head of the AI department there. And I was in the room when Gaia X has been born, the general political idea, and when we brought it slowly to France and made a convincing pitch to them that we should jointly drive this towards Europe. And then Europe joined, and as you can see at the later stage on 2 slides that I brought to you, we have been pretty successful there. So what in the end is Gaia X? There is like 2 things and 2 sides to that coin. The first is data sovereignty. We have been more than aware about 2 of the things that you mentioned already. The first thing is that all of the important innovations when it comes to data, when it comes to AI, when it comes to data applications and use cases within the industry, and all these sectors that are important, agriculture is just one of them, energy, even public services, they are all driven by the cloud. The second thing is we have no cloud provider in Europe, but we have legislation. And this legislation kind of sometimes clashes with the US legislation, and Schrems 2 is probably something that you all know about. So in the beginning, Schrems 2 wasn't there yet, but Gaia X was our idea of solving 2 issues at the same time. The first is that there is a lot to do in Europe when it comes to data sovereignty. And the second thing when it comes to data availability. And I start with the data sovereignty part. In the end, Gaia X it's a very complicated project. I could talk about it for 5 hours straight and without interruptions. But to give you one idea, it's a technical solution to the political problem, maybe, that these transatlantic data relations, that the European Chinese data relations and the data relations that span the globe are in the end subject to political haggling. What we offer with Gaia X is a rule set for these data relations, and especially when it comes to data protection and the avoiding of lock-in effects. And the second thing, we offer a rule set when it comes to setting up data spaces among equals. And if there is one product that Gaia X, which is now a business-driven initiative, it has been a political initiative, but we kind of took the backbench in the car, and now it's the companies that are part of the project that really drive the project. The one product that this is exporting is trust. It's interoperability and trust. And why do we do this? Because in the end, it's not only about the cloud. It's not about the infrastructure. It's about data availability and access to data. And in the end, it's especially for small and medium enterprises, kind of a hurdle to participate in data spaces, to participate in these huge projects where a lot of data is being combined with a new approach, with innovative ideas, and where you can really derive something truly innovative when it comes to AI services, when it comes to data applications. then especially small and medium enterprises have a problem joining these projects because they do not feel like an equal and they do not feel the trust. So what we try to do is setting up an ecosystem that's based on a common rule-based infrastructure where everybody can shine and where the basic issues of trust and data relations spanning global data relations are being solved when you start working within the framework. We have been pretty successful in the beginning. As you can see on this slide, we have more than 500 participants in, please one back, from 350 companies in the AISBL. The AISBL is an Association sans but lucratif, which is a French expression for a non-profit company organization, and it's based in Brussels. And as I said, it's being driven by these companies, and more than 3 out of 5 of these organizations are private companies. About half of them are small and medium enterprises, so we have been successful there too. And when you see the next slide, it's not only German and French anymore. There is more than 13 European hubs being set up right now. And as you can see in the slide down in the right lower corner, Korea has joined us in November too. So as you can see, it's not only a European project. We are trying to bring the innovation and the spirit of GaiaX to all over the world, because as I said, it should be an ecosystem amongst equals, and it should be a rule set for data spaces that span globally. So 2 things, and then I'm gladly handing over. The first is the most important part of GaiaX is that this ecosystem gives small and medium enterprises and gives these companies that are not leading right now at least a chance to compete, because it gives them access to data and it gives them a marketing mechanism of which they are visible and of which they can compete on a global scale. Right now, if you have a good application, if you have a good AI service, the best thing you can do for your company is to just being bought by one of the larger ones. So you join their supermarket of ideas and services. But what we try with GaiaX is, even if you are a small, medium enterprise, you can bite off your own piece of the cake, because you can be visible, you can be part of that ecosystem, and people will find you. And regardless of the infrastructure provider, people can work with you. And the second thing I want to especially mention about is that this is not something that we did to counter the global players, the hyperscalers. It is an idea that spans over the next decade, the next 3 decades. It's kind of the basic rule set for the data economy that's yet to come. And which we didn't do is, we didn't spend a lot of money to just build up a European hyperscaler. We tried to do a leapfrogging event and as I said, lay the groundwork for the next 2 or 3 decades. Thank you.
Great, Marco. Thank you very much. I want to maybe just comment on 2 things that you just mentioned, because for me, it also something that struck me at the very beginning. Initially, when I learned about this project, my first reaction, being in the data center business unit within Intel here in Santa Clara, was that this is just a crazy idea. You just cannot build something against the already established 7 hyperscaler. And over the time when I dive deeper, I clearly have to say I'm actually buying into the concept, because the positioning is actually quite different. And I think there's a lot of core values that this is driving it forward, particularly being established within the European cultural framework. And I think everybody should be aware of that, hence the session today. The second is, you also started explaining it was initiated by the government, but then it was handed over to the public or to the business side of the house. And I think that is a very, very interesting, important message to emphasize on, that this is not just a government initiative of doing something. This is now being handed over to the corporations, to the startups, to the investors, to the innovators, to actually take advantage of this platform and build it out. And with that, generate business, build new startup companies, and so on and so on. So these are very, 2 good takeaways. So Marco, Alexander, thank you very much.
May I chime in on 2 things very shortly? The first is, Thank you. On the map, the countries that you see, this is not just a country or the government joining. It's a so-called Gaia X hub, where the local companies that want to be part of the project come together and they kind of derive these use cases. They work together and bring their ideas to the larger Gaia X ecosystem. So don't get me wrong when I say the countries, it's just companies in that country founded a Gaia X hub within their country to bring these their national ideas on the grassroots level to the global idea. Thank you.
Great, thank you. With that, I would like to hand it over to Markus Lebrecht. Markus, please go ahead. A dear colleague of mine with Intel out of Germany. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Thomas, and thanks, Marco, for taking the lead here on Gaia X. Everyone, I'm Markus Lebrecht. I work for Intel out of Munich in Germany, as Thomas has said, and I'm a technologist. I work as an infrastructure solutions architect, as a security expert for Intel, and I happen to lead our Gaia X engagement. So that's why I'm here. The cloud basically runs, at least to a large degree, on Intel architecture. So I guess our idea is Gaia X should also run best on Intel architecture, otherwise it would hurt us, really. This is, in a nutshell, our very own intrinsic mission in this project. We are therefore a long-time contributor already. We are a member of the Gaia X community. We were there from basically day one. There was a term, day one member. And we are supporting the effort to broaden the market for cloud services, which this really is, broaden it for all of the participants included, making them easier to consume and produce, while at the same time staying within this, the idea of the guardrails of European legislation, European spirits, and fostering that data exchange that Marco has alluded to. Our 4 Intel key pillars of cloud innovation that you see here on the slide, they match with the targets that Gaia X needs to achieve, in my opinion. So we believe we can do, and actually we do that, contribute in either of these areas. Specifically with security technologies, that is one of my areas. That's why I'm included in the work with Gaia X. We personally believe that Gaia X, however, needs to have intrinsic value for all of its value chain members alike, meaning that the cloud is by itself a very deep value chain, from technology providers through infrastructure providers to low-level software, high-level software, you name it, up until you end on the technology stack and go into a number of levels of stakeholders in the cloud value chain that benefit from all of these things as well. So we are, our role, I think, is to a degree to make sure that the voice of technology providers and our direct partners, meaning our ecosystem, our direct ecosystem, gets heard in Gaia X. In our work, we are naturally a little closer to what you sometimes see depicted as the lower part of the famed X diagram. Not everyone loves this, but it's out there. So there is this X diagram where on the bottom, you have the infrastructure federation that Gaia X is building on. On the top, you have the data spaces that Gaia X is trying to establish. This infrastructure federation hasn't been attempted before on that scale with that type of alignment. So the discussions that the Gaia X community and the association were driving, and that needed to happen after it was founded in 2021, those were fundamental discussions at times. And so there was this whole Tuckman model of forming, norming, storming, and the focus needed to be found. I think we are by now pretty focused as a community on what we want to deliver. And I think every Gaia X community is by now sure that in 2022, we need to and we will deliver. There has been some refocusing efforts going on quite recently on the Gaia X project overall in the way people align and work with each other. And my hopes are pretty high that this year we will see Gaia X deliver with code, with platforms and services, and hopefully with initial business cases. There is a lot of projected demand from data spaces, and I'm sure hear about that following after me. And the data spaces consortia that are forming that demand for truly Gaia-X compliant services. But for this to happen, infrastructures will have to be brought up, services will have to be created, purely technically have to be created, and the value actually has to be proven. By later this year, I think, and I'm hopeful that all of that will, at least in parts, be there, and the domino stones will fall over for this to become a self-sustained activity. At this point in time, I think there's a lot of handholding still needed, but we're getting there. So with that, that's my sentiment on Gaia-X, which I think is a fantastic initiative, a thing that European citizens can be proud of, and where I would love to see more people contribute to. Thank you.
Great, Marcus. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good overview from an Intel perspective. Now let's switch over to a different viewpoint. And at the Transatlantic AI Exchange, we always try to get as many different viewpoints about a certain topic. And in this particular case, I'm very pleased to actually have two pretty well-known and established startup companies who are actually also developing their platforms, their products, their services on top of Gaia-X. But it also begs the question, in my opinion, if you're a startup company, if you're a game developer, if you're a mobile app developer, you need to wisely choose the platforms that you go after, because ultimately you need scale, you need reach, you need as many customers as possible. So I'm very interested to hear the next speaker sharing with us not just about his cool company, but also why they are working on top of Gaia-X, but also, in all fairness, what other cloud service providers or cloud services they are actually developing on, and why they are weighing one against the other. So with that in mind, I would like to introduce Robin Room. He is the CEO of Ferris. Robin, please take it from here.
Awesome, and thank you so much, Thomas, for inviting me and being part of this fantastic panel. So first of all, maybe a quick introduction to Ferris and what we do, and then jumping upon your key question there, Thomas. So with Ferris, we are first of all opening up how companies can securely collaborate on data while preserving the privacy and intellectual property of it. I can quickly share a key slide for that. So effectively what we see is that if you're building data products or unlocking insights from data as a data scientist, it is fairly obvious that you need access to high quality, diverse and large data sets. Now, the reality is that such data is often distributed across multiple different organizations, and those organizations obviously have various different requirements to how they need to store and process that data. When it's personally identifiable information, obviously regulatory constraints prevent from companies freely exchanging that data, and when it's IP sensitive data, then commercial trust risks prevent that. And that's why we see a world where effectively organizations still mainly use their data for internal purposes. And so what we have developed is a platform that allows organizations to use and open up their data across organizational boundaries, while still staying the owner of that data, while ownership of that data remains undiluted, and as well privacy and intellectual property is protected. And how we enable that is with a key idea that is well core to the Gaia-X values and ideas, which is the idea of federation. Now, federation for us means, in particular from a data science perspective, that we keep data locally stored and as well process it locally. That means within the environments of the different organizations. And we manage how computations are brought to distributed data sets of multiple organizations. And that's basically what the Ferris platform does. So it allows communication to distributed data sets of multiple data providers, sending computations to them and making sure that those computations preserve the privacy and intellectual property as specified by those data providers. Now, that's a platform that we've built based on a previous startup that we founded, where we recognized that this is a massive problem was a startup in the genomics space where data couldn't be centralized, and we solved it for a given use case. And later on, we realized that this is actually a challenge across organization, across industries, and we want to tackle that as a primary mission to why we founded Epheris for. And when we founded it in 2019, and at the beginning we didn't know about Gaia-X, and then at some point early in the days, I heard about it and instantly realized that exactly those, basically the principles that Gaia-X tries to bring as well to different organizations are very much in line with what we want to open up. And that's why we decided as well to early on embrace that. So that means today we build our platform in line with Gaia-X principles and obviously follow all the developments there very closely. We're as well part of Catena-X, which is one of the Lighthouse projects related to Gaia-X as well. That being said, I think, let's say the key principle, what we see, what is needed in that market to help companies jointly make use of their data sets is lower that barrier. And I think, Marco, what you said, make it interoperable, make it standardizable. I think that's exactly what we see as well as the biggest hurdle. We need to lower that barrier for organizations to collaborate together. And I think right now, we sometimes see that Gaia-X is the right path for organizations for that. Sometimes it's still not mature enough where we say, okay, with kind of like our platform, general nodes in AWS environments or similar, that's the easiest way to now bring multi-partner data collaborations to a set of companies that want to collaborate with each other. But that being said, I think one of the key principles for us is to make sure that we embrace those ecosystems that exactly follow the things that we are as well believe in. And so that's why we're big fans of the Gaia-X, all the Gaia-X ecosystem that basically helps set the standards, helps set as well principles for how organizations should collaborate and exchange data. And that's what we want to embrace as well. I would say that's the first rough overview, and really looking forward to further questions and discussions later on. Thank you, Thomas.
Great. Thank you, Robin. Maybe I have a quick follow-up question.
Awesome.
Based on your company's service and the platform itself, is that already today commercially available, production level, up and running on Gaia-X and other cloud service providers? So
we are commercially available. You can license the platform and launch a multi-partner data, collaborative data ecosystem within a day. That being said, I think it's still not entirely clear how for every use case the Gaia-X principles are to be set in stone. And so I wouldn't say that it's commercially available on for Gaia-X, but we are participating in as well developing Gaia-X ecosystems as well in publicly related projects. So yes, it's commercially available. Is it commercially available on Gaia-X? Let's discuss about what that means and what the requirements are, and then we can answer if that's kind of like commercially available out of the box or whether we need to jump on and further develop.
Okay, maybe that's a question that we can pick up in a second after the initial introductions. So one more to go. Obviously, one person excused himself. So Jonas Androulis is the founder and CEO of Aleph Alpha. Thank you very much for joining us. Personally, based on my previous roles and functions within Intel, this topic is extremely close to my heart. When I heard about the company, when I heard Jonas telling me the use cases, I was immediately bought in because I know what the problem statements are that needs to be solved. So super excited to have him here on this panel. Jonas, with that, please go ahead.
Super, thanks for the introduction. It's great to be here. I'm Jonas, I'm the founder CEO of Aleph Alpha. I'm a serial entrepreneur. This is my third company, and in terms of like my professional history, I've basically been doing software since forever. So, and I was doing AI before deep learning was cool, basically. And one of the things, and then I spent 3 years at Apple in their AI R&D leadership team for their special projects division. And one of the things I learned there is that there's a new generation of AI systems that is basically on its way to conquer the market and the use cases. And those systems are driven by world models. They are no longer use case specialized systems that are trained by training data. So in the past, and that is basically the technology that has driven the AI boom that we're currently all seeing, those systems were built on collecting training data, labeling the training data, and then training like highly specialized AI systems. And then that would yield us an AI system that could detect pedestrians, for example, right? And if you want to do something else with that, if you wanted to kind of detect traffic lights or danger or steer a car, you'd have to train a new system. And that was super expensive, right? That was expensive to label the data, to collect the data, and that was prohibitive for a lot of the smaller companies. They couldn't afford that, they didn't have the data. So basically that was in a way gatekeeping the AI systems from a lot of the smart and smaller companies. And now something else is happening in the sense that there's like giant models that are being trained, and those models are not really shown any training data that is task specific, and they're not like used for like a certain optimized idea, but they basically just learn the flexibility and they learn the structure of the world. So the task, the model is basically understand the world. And then once an AI system has understood the world, it is able to solve all kinds of tasks that can be articulated in any situation, right? So anything that you can articulate with language, those new AI systems can solve. And that fascinated me. I kind of learned that when I was at Apple still. I was absolutely fascinated by that technology. And so I came back to Germany, to Heidelberg, and started Aleph Alpha here with the goal to do AI R&D, to build and develop that technology in a European sovereign way, because that's actually like the next battlefield, so to speak, right? Other than cloud. Cloud is important. I'm happy to talk about like what this means from a cloud perspective, but from an AI perspective, these models will shape our future. And if we don't have any European companies that are capable of building those models and operating those models, that will be massive like challenge and difficulty to shape them according to our values, right? We're also part of Gaia X, and that's basically what we're doing there. We are contributing our model, we're contributing the core AI functionality to solve certain use cases, transformative use cases, do things that were never possible before this generation of AI.
Interesting. Thank you very much. I agree with you on the model and on the privacy, and there are so many topics that Transatlantic AI Exchange is planning to cover this year on separate session, particularly when it comes to not just the ethical part of it, but also the famous terms of explainable AIs. And people want and need to understand what actually is in these black boxes of these models. If I'm being rated publicly on performances, on credit card ratings and what have you, and some AI engine is deciding that for me or in behalf of me to others, that's a dangerous slippery slope. And that these are the kind of things this year that we are definitely diving a little bit deeper into. With that in mind, thank you everybody for the introductions. Maybe I'm opening it up a little bit more for an open conversation. Feel free, gentlemen, if you have anything that you want to throw in, please feel free. Maybe my first question is, how will Gaia X and the cloud initiative in general, and I want to be very clear, this whole session is not just a pitch session for Gaia X, honestly, it is really, I would say, a brainstorming session about what the European countries can do together to build either an alternative or an option for other cloud services that are either more appealing or based on different values, different standards, so that generally speaking, going forward on a global basis, we are coming together much, much closer when it comes to values, restrictions, privacy rules, and such, because at the moment it's pretty stretched on a global basis. Let's be very clear. But having said that, how will Gaia X or any equivalent opportunity influence the overall ecosystem in Europe? And how would somebody in the US be well served to actually get involved, keep an eye on it, or also adjust certain things in the US that they need to do from a product service offering so that when they're going into the European market, they're actually equivalently equipped? Marco, you are raising your hand. Please go ahead. You're muted.
Yes, I took my hand down first. So, sorry. Yes, thank you. So, I was having a conversation this afternoon, or at your morning at your time zone, in your time zone, with the MIT about the AI regulation in Europe, and I think that the best idea to kind of conceptualize what we are doing in Europe is, in American football terms, if you think about regulation, is the defense line. And then there is the offensive line. And the offensive line is all these these innovation policies, the data policies that Europe is driving at the same time too. It's not only regulation, it's these data policies too. But we need this regulation. We need the regulation on our data, the GDPR. I won't say that the GDPR is the best regulation ever, just referring to the idea of having something like a GDPR here. And we need something like the AI regulation, the AI Act that's just being done in Europe too, because it kind of gives you a framework within to work freely on your ideas. But on the other hand, this framework must not be too tight, so it doesn't hinder innovation. It needs to foster innovation, right? But this is just regulation, and Europe is very happy usually to just put some regulation in place and then it's going to hope that everything's going to be fine. But if you want to compete globally, you need these innovation policies, and Gaia X is just one piece of this puzzle, of the innovation policy puzzle. There is another piece, and probably the startups can tell you a lot of stories about this. Getting money out of Europe, or VC money or family offices money, is way harder than doing this in the United States. Why is that so? Because the tradition of VCs, the tradition of family offices, is way more defensive in Europe than it is in the United States. And the second thing is the sheer scale. If you are not a startup anymore, but a scale up, you need a lot of money. But 2 years ago, that was the last time when I was I was responsible back then for VC initiatives. The largest European VC fund when it came to digital products was 1.2 billion euros. And if you have a fund that's 1.2 billion euros, you can't just write a ticket of 80 million to a single company, because it completely wrecks your risk assessment. And in the end, it's not. This is, and that's my message: is regulation is a part. It's an important part, but the innovation policies are the offensive part. If you want to compete globally, then you need to do this too. And this is, I think, and combining these approaches together and think them as one. This is the opportunity that Europe seems to take right now.
Great. Anybody else want to chip in on that topic? I take that as a no for the time being.
Quick one, maybe just a quick one. Just wanted to share one quote that I always liked. I'm sorry to be getting back to Gaia X in this context again. The CTO of Gaia X called what they're doing in a nutshell, in a very simple sentence, regulation by automation. So every cloud-affine person can understand what that means. So all of that, what Marco just talked about, those rules, regulations, values that you should follow, you can now cloudify, enforce, and also do that around data with a platform that we're trying to develop. And so you're making it easy to do that on that side, and so you can focus on more of the added value on top of it. That's, in a nutshell, what I would add to this statement.
Okay, thank you. We don't have an investor on the panel today. We had obviously the research institution, but unfortunately he's sick. But let me ask the question particularly to our entrepreneurs on the call, and anybody else can chip in afterwards. But my question is also the cloud project in itself out of Europe. Does that actually create an opportunity for investors and startups alike to actually potentially build a new unicorn around it? Is that a realistic kind of a goal that can be set, or is that, you know, a smoking pipe? What do the entrepreneurs think on the call?
So just to verify, so basically is Gaia-X an opportunity to build a unicorn for a startup?
Yeah, that's part of the question, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, we actually evaluated that question for us and found it very difficult because ultimately, I mean, our core platform, the setup was very much in line with kind of like initial drafts of the Gaia-X infrastructure. And so we took a look and basically thought about, do we want to embrace that and bet all on Gaia-X and what kind of like market opportunities will open up? I think ultimately that was very hard to assess as well with, let's say, so many different working groups and not, let's say, obviously if so many different people come together as well who have high, let's say, interest and stakes in compute, cloud, services, etc. It's not a trivial thing to navigate as an early stage startup, and as well to make sure that you invest the right resources to produce early business outcome. So that's why we not decided to fully embrace that, but rather be part of it. Let's say, participate and make sure to, let's say, capture what is in line with what we built, but focused nevertheless on key problems that our customers had when they come together and wanted to collaboratively share data. Now, do I think that the project, like, let's say, if Gaia-X holds on to its promises and becomes as large as the vision basically sets out, I think it's fairly obvious that we need providers that make those whole, let's say, orchestrating such ecosystems, orchestrating such data spaces very intuitive and easy. And certainly there's many business opportunities, in particular for young and fast moving startups. That being said, I think what I would always recommend for any entrepreneur is really focus on that leanest way to get something off the ground. And so I would rather use Gaia-X, those different working groups, those initiatives, as an ecosystem to build out, set your own initiatives, set your own, what you want to bring to the market and make sure that's in line. But if, let's say, a certain initiative is too slow, then move ahead and make sure that you solve problems for your customers and somehow show that success. And I'm sure any Gaia-X working group will instantly see that there's, let's say, room to pick up and then jump on it. So in that sense, I think that's something that we do. Sometimes we work in parallel, sometimes we work ahead, and ultimately we think early business success will make sure that those things will be in line. And so maybe at some point we will be considered as that billion-dollar company that as well came out of the Gaia-X ecosystem. I'm not sure about that.
Okay. Jonas, what about you? Do you need or you don't need, or is it an advantage to have an EU-based cloud initiative rather than, you know, all the others that are out there?
So I really like the kind of comparison of the defensive and the offensive. And the defensive is important, or we need to take care of our value. You mentioned like ethics and value. And of course, there's things that mean a lot to us. But unicorns will only be made if we have phenomenal technology that changes the world, right? And that technology cannot be like, well, we are administrating the stuff that we are doing, right? Or we kind of have our walled garden, and then within that walled garden, that's fine, right? That's not a bad thing. But if you ask me where the unicorns are made, then that's on the offensive. That is if you build something that is truly remarkable and that changes the world. And like platforms, networks are certainly helpful for us, right? We, like IX was for us a great opportunity to work with phenomenal customers and partners, right? So that's certainly helpful, but it's not going to solve the problem that we need to build technology that is world-class, and we need to scale that technology. Certain platforms can be helpful, but it's not necessarily going to solve the core problem for us.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Maybe a quick question to Marcus. Knowing that we at Intel, we obviously sell, semiconductor technology and all kind of different things. The question, Marcus, maybe you can help me out here. If you look at universities and research institutions, right, including Intel Labs and all that we have, but particularly looking outbound, universities and research institutions, what kind of a role do you see they have, if any, to actually drive a European cloud initiative forward? And do they collaborate with China? Do they collaborate with the United States? Any insights that you can share?
Well, first of all, the initial setup of the founders of GaiaX had a high percentage of academics involved there already. So key important trends like already the foundation of, or the idea of data spaces was brought widely by people from Fraunhofer, for example, as part of the academic community, and they stay on board. They are drivers of these new ideas and help to get some of those parallel or sub-organizations get organized. Now there also is high interest in those areas of academics where you need data exchange in a protected way, let me say it like that. There's, for example, the German or Spanish health sector are involved in GaiaX from research hospitals. So there is definitely on the usage model side, there is high interest and participation from academics. Where I would like to see potentially more is from the infrastructure side. I know that we have great technical universities around the different European countries, and good ideas coming out of them that are not necessarily flowing in that same way into the GaiaX. But then again, GaiaX also needs to make sure it's not just an idea think tank, but it really has to implement. So there is a form of, specifically on the lower levels, of industrial software generation being embraced, and there needs to be output. So sometimes this is not the environment where academic, let's say PhD students, would thrive very, very well with their ideas. So a mixed message. Academics and cool ideas from academia are included in GaiaX. It is actually in some of the areas where GaiaX is trying to charter uncovered ground, so to speak, in terms of the way that it's trying to bring together multiple cloud platforms in a single whole. There are leading concepts that are being used, for example, from the Semantic website, just to name that because it comes up in my head. So academia plays a role, but the organization also has to weigh it with actually producing tangible output in a short time. That's probably one of the most challenging aspects at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Another thought crossed my mind, maybe for Marco Alexander, if you can answer this. You mentioned something very interesting earlier, and that was the addition of South Korea to this particular network, which actually surprised me a little bit in a positive way. Can you maybe, if you know it, can you explain a little bit more why somebody like South Korea actually jumps on the bandwagon of this particular European initiative? Question number one. Question number two, whatever that reason is, why not seeing somebody like US partners or China jumping on the same thing? What motivates one versus the other?
Thank you for the question. I think it's not one versus the other. It's them all but by themselves in the end, because there's reasons for each and every country, and each and every country has its own narrative why it joins Gaia-X. For example, the Japanese, which we have been in contact at the same time with the Koreans, they are, as you might know, really driving their idea of society 5.0 ahead. So the thing is that they feel that this is going to be, they're going to work together, and they have important companies that are already joining Gaia-X, like Fujitsu, for example. They are already a member in Gaia-X, but nevertheless, they have not yet set up an international hub. And this kind of fell victim to COVID, because we were supposed to go there and bring the AISBL to Japan and introduce them to each other. But then COVID happened. But there is another interesting case, for example, the United States. And don't get us wrong, Gaia-X is nothing that is against the US or against their companies. It's exactly the other way around. Not only Intel is part of Gaia-X, it's other. Yes, I said Fujitsu. It's other companies. Google is part of Gaia-X. Amazon is part of Gaia-X, and even and not even, but Microsoft is Gaia-X. As a Gaia-X member. So the interesting question is, why are the companies Gaia-X members? And I think the answer is pretty. It's not easy, but it is. It's a different one for each and every company. For example, if you have a market share like Amazon, and there is something going on like Gaia-X, which you think, okay, I probably should be part of this, because this might be huge, and if it's going to be huge, then I want to be part of it. And they're contributing pretty a lot in the working groups, same as Intel, same as Microsoft, same as Google. But if you are a Google, you have a different interest in partaking in such an endeavor. So in the end, these hubs, these nationally coordinated approaches, I think that's a more narrative that each and every country has. But we have a lot of members from all over the planet, especially from the United States, especially from Korea, especially from Japan, China too. But, and this is of utmost importance, when it comes to the mindset of the project, when it comes to the core European values, and when it comes to the data privacy and data sovereignty part, the project is still settled by European, or is still steered by European companies, because it's a European initiative at heart. Nevertheless, it's open and very warmly welcomes international participants, especially from the US.
Okay, that's interesting. Maybe another question for each individual, all four of you, from a different angle. How would you measure the success for yourself for this particular initiative? When and how would you call the implementation of this European cloud initiative a success for the project itself, and then also for you having participated in it? Who would like to go first? Robin, maybe I pick on you.
I can go first. So I mean, I never thought about that. So that's kind of like my intuitive response to it. But I would say, so what we do is we launch secure multi-partner data collaborations on our platform. That means multiple organizations come together and build a collaborative, closed collaborative ecosystem where they jointly analyze data in a secure and privacy-preserving manner. And I would consider the project, and as well our participation in it, as successful if at least, say, 40 to 50% of all collaborations that we launch on our platform are under the umbrella of, let's say, Gaia-X compatible, built on the Gaia-X principles or similar.
Okay. Anybody else? how would you define the success of this initiative and for yourself? Jonas?
So, yeah. So what matters for me a lot is the idea of sovereignty. And for me, sovereignty is not really super focused on data protection. That is a part of that, but it is focused on the ability to act and shape the future. Right? There are two things that are happening right now. One is that basically we are losing control of the technology. We can no longer influence it because others are creating the technology. We are mere users. And of course, this goes hand in hand with the fact that the value that's being created through new technology is not happening here, right? It's being transformed to the US mostly, right? My goal, and I think I would be happy if this project and others that are a good fit would lead to a scenario in which we would have the capacity, the skills, and the teams to act, and would be able to shape value here ourselves. Not exclusively, right? It's not like we have to do everything ourselves, but we have to, in a global network, we have to shape a big part of what's happening for ourselves and keep the value that's been created, because we will need the value to tackle the cultural and social challenges that a new generation of AI will bring. For us, very individually, what we need to do is we need to scale into Europe. We need to show that we are able to build and put into production technology that can bring something like a new industrial revolution. And others are at it too, right? Microsoft paid $1 billion for the GPT-3 license, so they have slightly bigger pockets. And we kind of have to show that we have something to offer here, not only in the walled garden where Microsoft is not allowed to enter, but on a level playing field on a global scale.
Got it. So before I give Marco the last word, I want to ask Marcus just quickly as well. How would you define the success for this European initiative? Obviously, besides selling, Intel chips a little bit more, but in general.
Yeah, of course. I buy very much into the vision of data sovereignty, not just for corporations, but also for individuals. And I see it as a stepping stone up from security, privacy, ultimately to a fair and just participation in a digital economy. That's my personal view. And Gaia-X will be successful if there are fundamental things that are established on the market that make it possible for us to step that ladder upwards, that a person can actually either manage their own data halo, that a corporation can be active in managing the data they produce, they want to consume, and ultimately make this a less dangerous place in the long run, a less dangerous place for business value, a less dangerous place for persons exposing themselves. That is overall my maybe a little bit naive hope of this being a success, because it advances the notion of data sovereignty based on privacy, based on security in the overall technological thinking.
All right, thank you. So maybe the last word for Marco. Marco, as the head of the task force for AI and representing the General Federal Ministry, how would you define the success for this Cloud European initiative? Will it influence other decisions outside Germany, outside Europe in a good way? It wouldn't be the first time that Europe is taking the lead on these kind of things. How would you define it?
I would start a bit earlier and would say, look, we had a lot of successes right now, and the first success was to get this general idea why we need something like Gaia-X translated into business decisions, right? So when you say, look, that's good from a perspective, from a societal perspective, from economical perspective from a country or of Europe is something different than to explain to companies like Siemens, like Deutsche Telekom, like Google, like Ferris, why they should mention or why they should join just such a product. That's the first success we had. The second success we had is kind of handing over the project lead from out of the political hands to the business-driven hands. And now there is 3 steps I see towards success coming in the next years. The next one is at the end of 2022, GaiaX needs to tick the boxes that has just been mentioned. We need to show that there is benefit for companies participating in the GaiaX ecosystem to be had here, which means they need revenue based on GaiaX solutions. This means, on the other hand, that there need to be infrastructure providers actually offering GaiaX compliant, interoperable services from their end. Deutsche Telekom and Google, for example, OVH, are working on that issue. And the third step is, and this is 5 years ahead, in the end, GaiaX is a success when most of the data traffic, when most of the data relations, and when most of the data availability is being secured via GaiaX in 2025, 2026, because then it is what we try to do, to achieve. It is the kind of the next gold standard when it comes to data relations and data availability and an ecosystem among equals, where companies like Ferris, companies like Aleph Alpha can thrive and bring their great innovative services to the market. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So on that note, just very quickly, we are right on time. I want to thank everybody for your contribution. I mentioned it very early on in the session. Check out transatlanticaiexchange.com after this session if you like. The March event, March 22nd, 25 speakers, high caliber, amazing 2-hour event. We have never done something like this before. It will be an amazing, valuable session. Check it out. Second of all, in the page, in the chat window here, Oliver or somebody from our team shared the link to the following networking session. So you have the ability, and we will be all visible, to ask questions to the speakers and amongst us. With that in mind, I want to thank everybody, the audience, as well as the speakers, for this really interesting, amazing session. Thank you very much. And you can click on that link in the chat and then disconnect on this one, and we will see you on the other side. Thank you.
Thank you so much.